This tutorial explains how to automate web browsers using the RSelenium package in the R programming language. The tutorial was created in collaboration with Samer Hijjazi, who is a data analytics and innovation associate at the University of Texas System. Samer is running his own YouTube channel where he speaks about topics such as web scraping, data analysis, or different kinds of useful R programming add-on packages. So definitely make sure to check out his channel. He's providing amazing content on his channel. So without too much talk, I'll hand it over to Samer for the tutorial.
Hello, and thank you so much for joining me. My name is Samer, and I work in data analytics. And in today's video, I'd like to show you how you can work with RSelenium. RSelenium is a package in R that allows you to automate your web browser and gives you more control over your web scraping. So before I jump into the video, I'd like to give a big thank you to Joachim for allowing me this opportunity to be a guest speaker on the Statistics Globe YouTube channel. It's actually really cool because when I started learning R, I actually stumbled upon this Statistics Globe website and I was using it as one of my resources for learning R. So it's really amazing to be involved in this opportunity. So I thank you once again, Joachim, for this opportunity. And without further ado, let's jump straight into RSelenium. Okay, let's just jump straight into the R code. Now first you're going to have to load in the necessary packages. Now before you load in RSelenium, you need to make sure that Java is installed on your computer. It's also known as the Java Development Kit. Now there are a lot of tutorials on YouTube that show you how to download and install that. So make sure you install that before being able to install RSelenium and running it, because it does rely on Java being installed on your computer. So once you have that downloaded, you can then run the libraries RSelenium package. And then we're also going to load in the tidyverse package for any data cleaning or data manipulation. And then we're going to load in the netstat package. And this is going to enable us to find a free port to run our RSelenium server on. So I'm just going to go ahead and run all these. Okay, we've loaded them in. And now we can start our RSelenium server. The way we do that is I'm going to go ahead and create an RS driver object. So I'm just going to say RS driver object, and I'm going to set it equals to the RS driver function. And the RS driver function takes a couple of parameters. The main one being the browser parameter. So this is where you can specify your browser. In this case, I want to use Chrome. Next, you're going to have to specify your Chrome version. Now, if you're not on the latest version, you do have to specify your Chrome version. And the way to do that is you will just simply navigate to your Chrome browser, type in Chrome://version, and you're going to look all the way at the top, and that is your Chrome version over here. Now, you primarily need to be concerned just with the first two digits. That's the main thing. And then what you're going to have to do after that is you're going to have to go into your console, type in binman, : and type in list versions and type in Chrome driver. That's going to give you a list of applicable Chrome versions that will work with the Selenium driver. So in this case, you're going to have to look for the 9.9. And in this case, our latest one over here actually matches the version we exactly have. So I'm just going to go ahead and take that. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it in here. Next, we're just going to pass in the verbose parameter and set it equals to false. What this is going to do is it's going to suppress any messages we get once we run our Selenium server. And last but not least, we're going to load in our port parameter and set it equals to free port. And this is the function that comes from netstat, and that's the only function we need from netstat. And that's going to find a free open port for us to run our RSelenium server on. So once we click on run, it's going to take a couple of seconds. And then it's going to load in a browser for us saying Chrome is being controlled by automated test software. Great. We can close out of this because in order to use RSelenium, we need to access the client side of the RSelenium server. So even though we close the web browser, the Selenium server is still running. And the way to access our client object is by creating an object called remdr, and we're going to set it equals to the RS driver object and $client. So that means we are accessing the client object of the Selenium server, and then we're setting it to the remdr object. So we're going to run that. Great. Now we have our client object, and in order to get our browser fired up, we're just going to type in the remdr $open. And once we run that, it's going to connect to the remote server, and now we have our client server running. Wonderful. Now, if we want to navigate to a website, you just type in remdr $navigate. And for this example in particular, I'd like to use the Statistics Globe website. So I'm just going to copy the URL from here and I'm going to paste it into quotation marks over here. And I am going to run it. And once I run it, you're going to notice that it is loading up in the automated browser. And here we have it loaded up. Now, to avoid confusion, I'm going to go ahead and close the initial Chrome browser I had open. And we're just going to work off of this. Now, I like to work off of a maximized window, so you could actually maximize it yourself manually, or you could even write a Selenium function called remdr max window size. And if I were to run that, and we go back to our window, you're going to see that it's actually been maximized. Wonderful. Now, the part of Selenium here is we want to be able to mimic human behavior on the internet. So we want to be able to click on things, type things into our website, being able to interact with our website, but just using code. And the way we do that is by finding elements on a website. So as you may already know, websites are made out of HTML elements. And in order for Selenium to be able to interact with the website, it needs to be able to identify those HTML elements on the website. So let's get started. For example, in this case, I want to start off by clicking on the Statistical Methods tab at the top. Now, this is a fairly easy one because you can actually identify an element based on the text of it. So this has a link text of statistical methods. And the reason why I say link text is because if you were to click on this, it does take you to a page. So that's why it's not necessarily a static text like this over here. It's actually a link text where if you click on it, it does take you to a link. So I'm back to the home page, and let me show you how you can click on that using Selenium. So we're going to have to refer to our remdr object $, and use the find element function. Now this does take a parameter called using, and the using, this is where you can specify your method of looking for an element. So you have several methods to pick from, such as ID, name, XPath, CSS, but in this case we're using the link text method. So I'm just going to type in link text, and I'm going to pass in the exact same text I see in here. Also being mindful that we do need to be aware of the case sensitivity because it is case sensitive. So I'm just going to type in statistical methods in title case, statistical methods. And then I'm going to wrap it up with another $, and type in click element. So what that's going to do is it's going to identify the element and then it's going to click on it. So to show you that this is running in real time, let me go ahead and open this up and let's go ahead and run this. So if I were to run this, it actually clicked on it and it's loading and it takes us to the statistical methods site. Well done. Okay, now to go back, we can just type in remdr $go back. And if we were to run that, it will go back to the home page, as you can see. And if you want to go forward, you can actually type in remdr $go forward. And if you were to run that, it actually does take you forward. And if you'd like to refresh your page, you can even type in remdr $refresh. And if you were to run that, it will refresh your page for you. Took a couple of seconds, and there you go. It's running just fine. Okay, now that's cool. Now another dropdown that I've seen over here is the R programming. It has a dropdown, and the inconvenient thing here is if I wanted to be able to click on these things, and I happen to click on this, it's actually going to take me to the R programming site. But in reality, I'm just trying to get to these things. Now, of course, based on human action, you can hover your mouse over the tab over here, and then you can click on any of the elements in here. But in RSelenium, how can we tell RSelenium to locate the mouse to hover over this element? And can we do that? And the answer is yes, we actually can do that. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to identify the element the same way we did over here, where we identified it by the link text. But there is one extra function that we're going to add. So first, let's go ahead and identify our function. So I'm just going to say identify our element. So I'm just going to say remdr find element, and I'm just going to use the same exact thing from over here. So I'm just going to type it. I'm going to just take this right here, and I'm going to paste it in here, and then I'm going to change this to R programming. Okay, but the only difference here is I want to store this in an object, and you're going to see why. So I'm just going to call this R dropdown, and I'm just going to run this, and now we have it in an object. And next, what I want to do is I want to say remdr, and I'm going to use a function called mouse move to location. And what that means is it will move your mouse to the location you specify. You can specify an X and Y coordinate to be specific, but in this case, we only want it to move to an element. And the element that we want it to move to is the R dropdown, which is the object that contains the R programming element. So to do that, we're going to pass in the web element parameter, and we're going to set it equals to R underscore dropdown. And then we are going to move to that location over there. So if I were to run this over here, it's going to actually expand the dropdown. Now, to just click on any of the items over there, all we need to do is type in remdr $find element, and then we can actually just copy this right here, and then we can just say R functions list, because we're using the same method of looking it up, which is the link text. And if I were to run that, oh, we do need to click on the element, of course. And if we were to run that, it should work. And there we go. It loaded up the R functions list page. Okay, and let me just go ahead and exit out of that. Okay, and let's go ahead and take a look. So what if I want to search something on a website? How can I do that? Now the cool thing is we do have a search icon, but the bad news is we don't have a link text, so we can't really use the link text method anymore for this. So we need to come up with a new way of identifying this element. So let's go ahead and use the inspect function on our web browser and look at the icon. So this is an A tag. The icon happens to be sitting inside of an A tag, and the class is equal to wSearchOpen, and the ARIA label is equal to search. So in this case, we can actually identify the element by its attributes, and the best way to do that is using the XPath method. And I'm going to show you how that works. So in order to do that, I'm going to go in here and type in remdr find element, and instead of link text, I'm going to use using XPath. And for the XPath, it has a weird syntax, but I'll be able to explain it to y'all. And the way it works is you're going to type in a double slash, and the double slash indicates look through the entire document. Next, you're going to pass in the tag that you're looking for. So in this case, it's the A. So it's saying look for the A tags. And you're going to open up a bracket over here and type in the name of the attribute that you're interested in looking for. So you're going to say @ARIA label, because in this case, I want to identify this element by the ARIA label, and I'm going to set it equals to search. Now to explain the syntax to you, what this basically means is look through the entire document for the A tags where the ARIA label of the A tag is equal to search. So that will help us identify the search icon. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually store this in an object, and I'm just going to call it search icon. And I'm going to go ahead and run this. And then what I'm going to do here is then I'm going to click on it. So I'm just going to say search icon and then $click element. And one of the cool things about storing an element in an object is that once you store it, you'll be able to actually access the functions of those elements. So if you click element and then run it, it loads up the search box. Wonderful. Now the problem here that we see is we don't see a go button. So I think the assumption here is we're going to have to click over here, search, type something in, and then press enter. How can we do that? Can we even pass keys to RSelenium? And the answer is yes, we totally can. And the way we're going to do that is first I need to be able to identify the search box. So I'm going to use the inspect function, and I'm going to look for the search box. And the search box happens to be over here, and it has an input tag. So this is the type of HTML element. So it's an input element where you can input text. So it says the type is equal to text, the name is equal to S, the ID is US form search S. So we have an ID, and usually having an ID is a good identifier for the elements because it's a unique identifier. So I'm just going to use that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a search box object, and that's where we're going to store our search box element in. So I'm just going to say remdr.find element, And I'm actually, in this case, I'm going to be using the ID method. And all I need to do is just pass in the ID like that. So we have the search box over there. And then what we can do is I need to click on it. So search box, $, click element, and that's going to click on it. So if I were to run this, it should click on it. So run. And then as you can see, the cursor is now flashing. So that's great. And then now we want to type in the text. So for this example, I just want to be able to search for the ggplot2 stuff on the Statistics Globe website. And the way to do that is you just type in the search box and then $, send keys to element. And then you're going to have to pass in a list. And then in the list, you're going to have to pass in the text that you want to pass in. So in this case, I want to pass in the ggplot2, and that's the text we want to search. And then we're going to have to put a comma, and then we're going to have to use the key parameter and set it equals to enter. And the enter represents the enter keystroke on your keyboard. So if I were to run that, and just to show you some space over here, and run that, it types in ggplot2, and it searches it, and it gives us all the resources on Statistics Globe that are related to ggplot2. Excellent. Now, one of the things over here that I've noticed on this page is if I scroll all the way to the bottom, it still has more of these resources to load. And if we scroll down more, it has more resources to load. So it doesn't give us all the resources at once. So we need to keep scrolling to be able to access the rest of the resources. Now there's a piece of code that you can write that you can actually scroll through the web page, but you're going to have to need some JavaScript for this, and thankfully there is a function in RSelenium that allows you to plug in JavaScript code, and that is the execute script function. And I'll show you how that works. So let me just go ahead and refresh this page right here. Okay, and let's just scroll all the way to the top. Wonderful. Okay. And let me go back here and I'll go ahead and start typing the code. So it's remdr $execute script. And we're going to have to pass in some JavaScript code. So bear with me. This one looks a little bit confusing, but I'll be able to explain it. So you're just going to have to type in window, scroll to, and then you have to type in a 0, and then document, dot body, dot scroll height. And then you're going to have to close the parentheses, and then you're going to have to end it with a semicolon. So what this means is it says, in this current window, I want you to scroll to the starting position, which is 0, and the ending position, which is the height of the document. So the height of the document means it's the end of the document. So if I were to run this right here, what it's going to do is it's going to take us to the bottom of the page. Now, of course, it loads in the other content. So if I were to run this again, it takes us even bottom further. Now, we can actually just create a very simple for loop for us that will scroll through the site, through the web page multiple times in a row. So we can just type in, for example, for I and 1 through 5. So let's say we want this to scroll down 5 times. But then we can just take this code over here. I'm just going to cut it and I'm going to paste it. And then last but not least, because it takes a little bit of time to load the content, I'm going to let it sleep for 3 seconds. So sys.sleep. And I'm going to let it sleep for 3 seconds. So if I were to run this loop right here, it's going to just keep scrolling 5 times, as you can see. And it finished scrolling. So of course, this one is longer. Of course, you can write a loop that will scroll through the entire document, but for this, for the sake of this video, I like to keep it a bit simple. Okay, now I do want to show you just a little bit of some web scraping over here that I wanted to show you. So I'm just going to go ahead and navigate back to the statistical methods page, and I want to show you how you can obtain do a little bit of web scraping here. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to be able to web scrape these titles over here. And the way to do it, of course, is we need to inspect our HTML inside, and I need to go ahead and look at these titles. Now the titles, they fall within an A tag because obviously they're a link, but the ID is not really telling here. The ID is just too specific, and then the href tag attribute over here is also, very specific as well. But we could use the h3 tag over here, and the h3 tag has a class of entry title. So we could actually use this class title to be able to return to us all the tutorial titles over here. So let's go ahead and type up some code for that. So I'm just going to type in remdr tutorial.find elements. So in this case, I'm typing elements and not element because we're trying to return multiple elements at once. And we are going to be using the XPath method for this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be looking specifically for the h3 tag where the class name is equals to entry title. And then I'm going to close it off. And that's going to find the elements for us. And I'm just going to store this in an object called tutorial titles. So tutorial titles. Oops. I'm going to set it equals to that. So if I were to run that, it says error, failed to class, unable to h3. Oh, forgot to close this, of course. We need to make sure we're closing our quotes. Okay, perfect. And now we have this, but if we try to access the text here, we won't be able to access it. So if I were to try to use this and say get element text, for example, it's not going to work because it is within a list. So the way to access this is I'm just going to go ahead and use an lapply function for this. So I'm just going to say lapply tutorial titles, and I'm going to pass in a function of x. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to say x $get element text, and then I'm going to pass in the unlist function. Now what this does is it basically loops through each of the items in the tutorial titles, and the x over here represents each item in the tutorial titles, and it applies the get element text function to it. So if we were to run this, it's going to give us all the titles. Now, of course, you can do some further unlisting to this because it's still a list within a list, and the way to do it is we can actually pipe this into a flatten function, and the flatten function comes from the per package. So we can flatten this as a character, and if we were to run this, we do get the titles right now in a vector format. And it gives us all the titles to each of the tutorials over here. Excellent. Now, one more thing that I want to show you over here is how we can actually access the element attributes. So let's say, for example, I'm interested in the images of each of these tutorials, and let's say maybe I want to download them in the future or something like that. So in order to access the source of these images, you're going to have to inspect over here and click on the image. And this is going to take us to the image tag over here, and we can see the source attribute. It gives us the exact source of that image. So we can do the same idea over here, and we can actually, the same idea as just right over here. And so I'm actually just going to copy this code, and I'm going to paste it all the way at the bottom. And I'm just going to call this tutorial images. And I am going to find the element using the image attribute to where the source, and no, we're just going to keep it at the image tag. We don't need the source just yet. So I'm just looking for all the image tags over here. And, or well, actually, we do need to make sure that we're not capturing any other images. So what I'm going to have to do is we have to identify the class of it actually. So I'm just going to say class is equal to, in this case, we have a class name over here. So it's RT image responsive, and we're just going to use that. Okay. And if I were to run that, okay, it works just fine. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have to go into the tutorial images, put it in lapply, but instead of the get element text, we're just going to say get element attribute. And I am going to pass in the source attribute. So if we were to run this, it's going to give us a list of all the links to each of the images. So if we were to run that, it gives us a link to each of these images. And then what you could do is you can maybe pass this into a download.file function, and it will be able to download all the pictures for you. Okay, so now that we're done, how can we close our web browser and then our web server? Now those are two different things. Now to close the web browser, it's fairly simple. All we need to do is type in the remdr $close window. And if we were to run that, it's going to close our web browser like it just did. However, if we do this, it doesn't necessarily shut down the server. To shut down the server, we actually need to terminate the Java process. And in order to do that, we're going to have to pass in the system function. So this is a base function from base R. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to pass in OS commands. And the way this works is we're going to type in system, in quotations, task kill, and then we're going to type in a /im, and then type in java.exe. And then last but not least, we're going to type in a / and f. And what this does is it basically says, kill the task of java exe and basically force stop it. So that's what it means. So if we were to run this, it actually says that the process has been terminated. So that actually terminates the server and the server is no longer running. So that means you're completely done with your work. So anyway, I hope this was an interesting introduction to RSelenium. I do have a in-depth tutorial on my channel for RSelenium where it goes deeper into it. And of course, I do plan to create more resources for it as well. So I hope you learned something new today. And thank you so much, Joachim, for having me again. I really appreciate the opportunity, and we will see you next time.
Thanks a lot once again to Samer for his contribution to this video. I will put a link to his YouTube channel into the description of this video, so definitely make sure to check out his channel. And if you have liked this video, make sure to subscribe to the Statistics Globe YouTube channel as well. I'm providing new R programming tutorials on this channel on a daily basis. See you in the next video. Bye bye.